Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's BAInsights, in which I'm really pleased to invite or include three guests. We're talking about facilitation and acceleration, definitely something that is very pertinent to us business analysts and actually beyond as well. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation today. Before we get into that, I'd just like to remind anyone that's watching this and hasn't subscribed or has any comments throughout the video about anything that's said today, feel free to put the comments in or to subscribe if you haven't already. And otherwise, let's dive in, do some introductions. And Jen, if we can start with you, please, first.
Okay, thank you. Hi, I'm Jen, all the way from Australia. I'm currently a business analyst, and even though I haven't had that role title from throughout my career, I think I've been doing business analysis work for a good, just under 20 years now. I love it. And what I also love is problem solving, finding the right problems, and helping others do the same.
Perfect, thank you, Jen. And Alicia?
Hi, I'm Alicia. I'm joining you from the US. I've been in the role of a BA/project manager for 17 plus years. So I'm super excited to be here.
Excellent, thank you. And last but not least, Penny.
Hi, I'm Penny Pullan. I have been doing business analysis and things related to it, like project management and program management, for about the last 30 years, initially in big companies for the last 18 years or so. I've been running my own consultancy, working with lots of different organizations around the world, and it's lovely to be with all of you today.
Thank you, Penny. And likewise, certainly is. And for those that don't know, who watch these videos and think we just come together magically, generally it takes a few months of connections and introductions and trying to get each other in the same place all at the same time. So it's really nice to have everyone together and on this session. So let's dive in, Jen, if we can, with the first question. I'll pose it to you first in terms of how you define facilitation in the context of business analysis and why it's a critical skill.
Thank you. It's a bit daunting always going first, but thanks. I find that facilitation, I feel like it's a human skill. We involve people and we're needing to be aware of what people are saying and thinking, and practicing empathy and creating space to allow people to actually not be afraid to come forward with their points of views. And I think that's critical in our work because we do want to get to the bottom of problems of those ideas and really get into those insights to get really clear on what we're trying to do, what we're trying to solve for them.
Excellent. Thanks, Jen. I know it's always daunting going first, but an excellent first start. Yeah. Anyway, Alicia, be your point on that same question.
Yeah, so I look at it from the root word, the Latin word facilis is easy. It makes something easy. So that's how I look at facilitation. I think it leads to lean documentation if done correctly. You can validate things early, just through that simple conversation. And then I look at it as like the backbone of collaboration, truly. There's different styles to facilitation. It's not a one size fits all. And you have to know your audience and know which approach to use. So I think it's a critical skill to have so that you can drive that business value.
Excellent. Yeah, it's really, really important points there, Alicia. Thank you. And Penny.
Absolutely. It's about making things easier for groups. As you've just said, Alicia, I'm going to dive into the literature and just pull out something from David Subit from The Grove in California, who says facilitation is the art of leading people through processes towards agreed upon objectives in a manner which encourages participation, ownership, and creativity from all involved. I really like that one. I mean, there are a few other ones that are quite useful. Things around being neutral. BAs tend to be a little bit more neutral than many of the other people in the project team. So perhaps you can take on this role of helping others to work through processes more easily than other team members. But yeah,
and then what comes together as what the three of you said, there's very much the role of facilitator. It's almost like a conductor of an audience, making sure that allowing the different individuals and representatives in the room to have the opportunity in the limelight to to perform well and to be part of that cohesive unit. Penny, you can
without being a diva. Conductors of orchestras often are a bit diva-like, they have to be called maestro, whereas BAs don't want to be called maestros. BAs would often rather be catalysts in the background. Yeah. And for me, when I facilitate and a group comes to the end, if they say, we did this, we achieved this together, and they forget about me, then maybe that's not brilliant for my consultancy, but it's actually achieved the objectives.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's much better if you can observe loads of stakeholders interacting and sharing points rather than you have to interject. And certainly the less we talk on these sessions or when we're facilitating is probably the better, so we can hear more of that useful insight. So we've touched on facilitation. We will obviously talk about it in a bit more detail. But Alicia, what does acceleration mean to you in the context of BA?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. Acceleration in the context of business analysis, I think about helping teams move faster towards their solution without compromising quality and simplifying and streamlining process, trying to stay focused on that value.
Thank you very much. And Pen?
Okay, absolutely. I think you also need to think when you're accelerating about actually, if you want to go fast, you can go alone. But if you want to actually get there and achieve things together, you need to actually slow down so that you're going together. So just because you're accelerating doesn't just mean doing things as fast as possible, but it means taking people with you at the same time as working really effectively.
Yeah, it's a really, really valid point. Nothing worse, or no point having the fastest facilitator in town, as it were. They've already finished and no one else has started talking yet, as an example anyway. So yeah, really valid point. And Jen, what will be your perspective on acceleration?
Yeah, thank you. When I first heard about acceleration, the word smooth came to mind. Like, how do we remove like those roadblocks, or some friction is good, but how do we actually make progress? Comes to mind. So not, super quick, but really being clear on where we're headed and how do we get there the best way.
Yeah, and when I think about acceleration as well, I mean, I think it means many things. Obviously, you mentioned some of them already. I think getting some insights faster is definitely one of the outcomes that we would look to gain from acceleration. But I think also there's an element sometimes of failing fast as well. I think it's not just about how do we reach the desirable end as quick as possible or get the answers as quick as possible. Sometimes just identifying what we don't want to do as quick as possible is useful as well. But you've done such a good job of answering the question. There's not really much more I can add to it. So I wonder, Penny, are there any go-to techniques for facilitating productive workshops or stakeholder meetings that are dear to your heart, should we say?
Absolutely. So one of them is something that I call my magic 6. And these are the 6 questions you really ought to sort out at the beginning of any workshop. I'm just going to bring it up on the screen, actually, just in a moment. Yeah, here we go. Publish. There we are. Hopefully you can see a few. It's a little bit blurry. Anyway, if anyone's interested, just contact me and I can send you a link. But it's just 6 questions. What are we here to do? What's the purpose of this session or this project or this meeting? Today what are the 4 or 5 things we do together? The objectives, if you like. What's the time plan, our plan? Who's doing what? What are the different roles involved? How are we going to work together? What are the rules? Never use that word though. What are the rules that we're going to live by in our workshop? And then what's going to happen next? So those are the things that I would say are really helpful to consider.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Jen, any views from you to share on that point of go-to techniques that you use?
Yeah, no, thank you. So in my own experience, different techniques work better, I guess, in different stages of like a project. So if it's at the beginning, the discovery type of workshop versus maybe in the middle where you're designing, you need to do some brainstorming. So if I was to pick one, I really enjoy a brainstorming technique called reverse brainstorming, where you kind of think backwards, think of the worst possible ideas and how do we actually make them work. That's always a fun one, where everyone gets involved and almost kind of get off their chest all the bad ideas, and make use of those.
So that demonstrates to me as well. I always plenty of new techniques that I hear about through these sessions. So it just adds another reason to do them, I would say, from my perspective. So I've never not heard of the reversed sessions that you mentioned before. You know, I think I did hear what's the worst that could happen, or something along those lines, or the worst scenario, and you find that you try and start there and try and work your way back in a similar way. But this is definitely a new one. So thank you for sharing that, Jim. Alicia.
I think my favorite one is going to be the 5 whys to get to the root of the problem. I think that always generates some really good conversation, and helps stakeholders discover where the root of their problem is. Because sometimes we can, throw a Band-Aid on a problem, but we're not really getting to the root of it. So 5 whys I've found quite successful. And then I also like brainstorming.
Yeah, definitely two favourites of mine as well, Alicia. Definitely the root cause analysis, fishbone diagrams that come with it as well.
Mhm.
Good way to sort of explore the underlying reasons for why there's issues as well, things that we can fix. So absolutely. I think on top of that, I think things that I would add as well. I think for yeah, the techniques is probably I would just prepare. Yeah, the process is probably a very useful technique for me. So having that view of what the process is, it just anchors a lot of the conversation in what we're should be doing, or what we should be trying to achieve, and who we should be involving, and what the key outputs are as well. So it does act as a very good backbone for that, and probably keep some of the conversation on track, I would say. And I wonder, Jen, are there any methods that you've used to accelerate requirements gathering without sacrificing depth or clarity? And when maybe some of when you hear the term requirements gathering, recognise it's not as simple as gathering, so maybe requirement solicitation might be a better term for it.
Yeah. We try and stay away from the word gathering, don't we? So I did think about this for a little bit, and I'm not sure if I'm going to answer the question directly, but it kind of touches on kind of what you just said previously, which is having that really good core view of the end-to-end journey or problem, so that we can always anchor back to what we're trying to focus on, like if we wanted to focus on that. So other things are, putting together those assumptions. What are they? Can we move forward with assumptions and then iterate over them once we know more? Because we're not going to know all the answers in one session. We'll need to keep coming back to collaborate on different things at different points of time. And so what can we move forward with now versus later? And just having a pulse on that, overarching goals and outcomes that we want to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. And Alicia?
I think my go-to would probably be storyboarding, mock-ups, things like that. Because sometimes stakeholders are extremely visual. So it helps to really get to the root of what they're looking for when using some sort of visual tool like that. Also, if you're working with people that are a bit more technical, that are really in the weeds, it's also helpful to use a simple visual tool to keep them out of the weeds while still getting the information that you need. Because sometimes stakeholders like to get into the solutioning and trying to tell you how to do something if you're on the IT side of the fence in terms of business analysis. So it's helpful to keep things simple but visual. So I like storyboarding and mock-ups.
Yeah, and it really resonates with me, Alicia, because I think you know, if you're trying to capture all of the requirements for something visual like a report or a screen or an application, and you're not using a mock-up, you're sort of hamstringing yourself a little bit because actually, firstly, it's quite complicated to write all of that detail down in words alone. And it's even more complicated for stakeholders to look at those words and interpret whether you got it right or whether there's more to add. So just drawing that picture is a really good way to tease that out and figure out what the end goal is from a user perspective, at least. So yeah, really, really good one. Thank you. Penny.
Yeah, really picking up on all those points so far. I use a lot of graphic facilitation, so actually doing live, very simple graphics drawn live, either on the screen, or if you're in a room together on a big sheet of paper. That really engages people, but also it has that visual effect that you were talking about, Alicia. And building on Jen's point, making sure you have the right people in the room. And it might be that actually that you can do that more quickly if you do things in a hybrid way, but then making sure that, or virtual at the moment, making sure that you do that, facilitate that so well that actually you don't miss out on the richness that you get of in person. And I would say some of the things that are really helpful are actually appreciative inquiry and solutions focused, where you're building on what already works. That seems to be a really powerful way to get to get people positive. If you can get people positive and pulling together, then that's half the battle, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that resonates as well, because I think if you can get the energy going in the room and the stakeholders sharing and they're starting with that positivity, rather, if I can say it, it's always a good way of doing that as well. I think really trying to think what I would add on top of that. Really, I think probably just giving each stakeholder a little bit of time prior to workshops or detailed sessions, just to collect their thoughts and think about what their perspective is or what their requirements or their process. I think that's particularly useful, so that you're not hijacking everybody the first time they know of a situation when they're presented to about it from you in a room is not particularly helpful. And sometimes as a BA as well, I find that it's not very helpful for me to turn up on a workshop with no real context and hope that I'm going to pick it up enough to facilitate the session. When in reality, probably better for me would be to spend a little bit of time with one or two stakeholders, getting an appreciation of the type of topics, what the business is, some of the potential requirements, so that we can use that perhaps as a way to grease the wheels or as an appetizer or for someone to start building upon, which is probably just a slightly different way of saying what Penny said, really, is starting with something positive that you've gained from speaking to someone else, as it were.
That's good.
And I wonder, I mean, Alicia, are there any tools, whether it's digital or physical, that you found most effective when you've been facilitating workshops or collaborative sessions?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think it really just depends on where the stakeholders are located. So I with hybrid teams. So, and depending on reading the room, right? Because you have to read the room. In some of the jobs that I've had, I've used there's a tool called like a USB document camera. So those that need to have that, I need to see it on a whiteboard. Well, I can draw it for you virtually on my whiteboard here and show you the camera, so that it's a little bit easier for those that are more traditional to make that jump to the virtual space. I also like to use Mural. I found that quite effective to facilitate discussions, because everyone can interact using one of those platforms. Lucid Chart works the same way. So,
yeah, excellent. And Penny?
Yeah, well, both of those, when you're working virtually, a document camera, Mural, but also I have a graphics tablet that I just draw on, and it appears in PowerPoint or Mural or whatever, which is really helpful. It's more precise if your document camera isn't there in the moment. But also, actually, in the room, big boards, big sheets of paper, lots of wonderful colorful markers, and this is one you might not be expecting, dry pastels. because you can add color and highlights and connect. For example, if you're connecting similar things, or if you have a process running through, and you want to show that things are linked, you can have them all the same color. That can be good.
Yeah, maybe it shows the benefit of keeping a few colors back, to be able to link them together once you let the team and those in the room use those pens appropriately. It makes me think as well of Paddy and Grant we've had on before from a Visual Jam as well. You know, they use sure they use graphics cards, tablets, whatever you said there, Penny, in terms of just drawing, just drawing a picture in a slightly different way, quite interesting and engaging way. It doesn't have to be, functional or BA models or process, but just something to just to, I guess, get the creativity going as well can be particularly useful.
It is,
as well.
Absolutely.
Jen, what would be your view on that point around acceleration techniques or tools, rather?
Yeah, tools. So similar to Mural, I love Miro. I actually work remotely 99% of the time, so that's the one tool I always pop open. And what I really like about it, that it doesn't have to be neat, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's actually quite raw, and yeah, people can follow you around the board. They don't have to interact in it if they don't feel comfortable doing so. And there was another thing that I really like. Oh, I know this is going to sound a bit strange, but I really like the little icons and emojis that you can put on there. Like sometimes those little pictures can really represent that thought in a more fun and creative way than just words on a post-it note.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and I guess with post-it notes, you sort of run out of options, don't you, in terms of how to distinguish good ideas or paths.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
whereas if you're using Miro or Mural or something similar, then you've got a whole toolbox of different icons that you can decide to apply if the situation calls for it. Yeah, I must say, I mean, similar. I use both Miro and Mural when I can. I actually use Visio a lot as well, because I'm not always in a environment where we can use Miro or Mural. So it's generally a case of creating just a very big Visio drop diagram that we can move objects around as well. But they're not always as good for collaboration, of course. It tends to be, you might have to nominate someone to move the objects around. So definitely something where everyone can interact and take control themselves is generally better in my experience, I would say. But there's loads of other tools out there as well for collaborating in different ways. Confluence is just one example of that, where the collaboration isn't just coming from being able to move objects around real time. Sometimes it's actually about sharing information collaboratively so that others can do what they need to do, whether they're BAs or elsewhere otherwise. So there's some techniques that crop up, or tools rather, that occur to me. And Penny, are there any particular techniques or canvases or visual aids you might also use to accelerate discussions, or maybe even align understanding if that's necessary?
I was thinking about this and thinking actually it's probably very similar to the ones before. The things that are helpful for facilitating are helpful for accelerating discussions and align understanding. And actually just getting everyone to share their perspective. It's not a tool, but it's a metaphor. The 6 blind men and the elephant, an ancient Indian myth where there are 6 blind men, 1 elephant, and 6 people who are blind don't know what an elephant is like. They have slightly different perspectives of the elephant. One thinks it's like a rope, one thinks it's like a wall, one thinks it's like a tree trunk, because they've got different parts. But actually in that story, they just need to sit down and listen to each other to actually understand the full perspective, understand everybody's perspectives to get the full picture of what an elephant is like. And I think that's so helpful for, if you're going to accelerate discussions, you need to have that shared picture, that shared understanding. So I'm just going to go for that, which is 3,000 years old plus, I think, but hopefully still quite useful. I use it quite a bit with my sessions.
I mean, I think it can never be repeated as how useful just the power of perspectives really is anyway. So I think this is another example of it. And I think one of you said at the start, really about being able to ensure that everybody in the room or in the session has that opportunity to share their view and their angle and their story. So I think this is it's just another reminder to keep thinking about perspectives. Is probably a reminder to ensure you speak to everyone in the room or give them the space to share what's inside their heads. Really. Jen, what would be your view on that question around techniques or canvases or visual aids?
Yeah, thanks. Actually, that story, Penny, that was like my childhood bedtime story. I love that story. So visual aids, a very similar kind of concept where sharing views is I really find customer journey mapping very, very powerful and helpful. Because like everyone starts to realize, oh, I didn't think that happened, or I didn't know you felt that way about that particular step. I thought everything was going well. And you start to really allow for those discussions to happen whilst like having like more of a guided approach to this is how we're going to talk about it. It looks linear, but in fact, they're actually pulling on other threads and other views and points. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, very similar actually. I mean, I think the process flows for me is an example of a technique and a tool. I mentioned it before, how useful it can be. I think along similar lines as well, putting together a high-level SIPOC can help facilitate some of those conversations and just get everyone on not necessarily on the same page, but at least everybody has an opportunity to see the outcome of some of the points that are being discussed and the shared understanding, if you like, that's being compiled. Alicia.
Yeah, I agree with all of those points. To add to that, I would say going back to the similar answer I gave earlier, going back to the visual tools, wireframe. So like I like to use like things like Figma, going more on the product management side now, using more of those like I'm trying to sell this and making sure that this is what you are truly looking for, trying to give like a mock-up of that final product for them to, tell me, is this what you're actually looking for before moving into the technical coding piece.
So I've got one more question for you, if I may as well, in terms of just really whether in fact, I'll make it two, right? So it's really whether there are any other points that you'd like to share on facilitation or acceleration. But also the second question is where anybody watching this can find you or hear from you in the future. So whether you write books or examples. So Jen, if I may ask you first.
Oh, sure. One thing that I've had to learn the hard way is to let go of taking control. Sometimes the facilitation part is things just don't go to plan. So how, kind of like what Alicia said about reading the room, like, do you let that conversation continue? Is that worth discussing? Or should you, put in like a parking lot or other methods to say, look, that's not for today, but it's important and we'll come back to that at a better point in time. So it's just really expecting the unexpected in facilitation.
Yeah,
And
you make an excellent point, Jen, because there are times where the conversation, you say, goes in a slightly different direction and maybe detracts from the scope or the purpose. So I think having those facilitation skills to move things slightly back into line, put things in the discussion points in the parking lot or wherever is definitely a key skill. And is there anywhere, Jen, that people watching this can hear from you or see things that you're contributing to the BA community?
Yeah, no, thanks. You can find me link on LinkedIn. And in the past, I've run workshops with other BAs, and I'm looking to do that as well again. So if you're interested, message me.
Thank you, Jen. And Alicia, I'll ask the same questions to you, really.
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so basically, have you got any other points to raise around facilitation and acceleration? And then where can people find you? I know you've got a book, Alicia, so that might be a good place to start as well.
Okay. Thank you for repeating the question. I guess a piece of advice I would give, something else I want to share is remember that at the end of the day, that we are servant leaders, and we are people at the end of the day. So remember there's a human side to what we do as a profession. So that is always very helpful to share and keep in mind, because it really means a lot from the stakeholders' perspective that they have somebody that actually truly cares and listens to their needs versus someone that's trying to hurry up and get done and just to meet numbers and quotas, etc. So remembering that we are people at the end of the day and we are here to serve. And yes, I've co-authored a book. It's called Businessanalysis, Bridging the Gap Across Industries. It's available on Amazon. I've also authored an article on IIBA as well. So you can find me on LinkedIn.
Excellent. Thank you, Alicia. And Penny?
Yes, one thing. Well, whoa. Lots of really useful things from the others. I would say, having trained hundreds of BAs in facilitation, I would say get some really good quality facilitation training, because so many of these things you learn through mistakes, or at least I did initially before I had some really good training. And so much better to be able to practice in a safe environment and learn from the mistakes everybody else has made so that you don't have to. If you're not able to do that, I do have a book called Making Workshops Work, Creative Collaboration for Our Time. This takes you step by step from the beginning. If you have a workshop, then you can work through this and it'll help you through every stage. I've got a few more books. There's Businessanalysis and Leadership. It's getting a bit old now, but still, I think, quite good.
I think books, Penny, are never too old. I've got books here from quite a few years ago, and I'm sure
perhaps you should do a new
Charles
edition.
Dickens on their shelf still, and he's a little bit old as well. So,
but there's a new edition of Virtual Leadership, though, that came out a couple of years ago. So if you're working with virtual teams, that might be helpful for you. And if you want to find me, you can find me at makingprojectswork.co.uk or facilitation.training.
Great, and I will share the images and links as well on this on the post at the end for people to go to. Brilliant. I think really everyone knows where to find me, of course. But the point I would add in terms of additional points around facilitation and acceleration is really just to observe others, really, and that's take the time to watch others, not just in business analysis, but generally how they present, how they facilitate, how they host the room, how they bring people into play, and actually, and maybe some that don't do it very well, because I think you can learn from those that are not doing it particularly well, and you can identify how you might do it better if you were in their shoes. But also, if you see someone doing something a little bit better than you can already, then I think it's probably okay to steal it in that way. Make their good practice your good practice, as it were. So that'd be the advice I would use. Certainly done that a few times myself over the years. But otherwise, I think that we've sort of reached the natural end to the session. So thank you everybody for your time and your insight on facilitation and acceleration as well. Definitely look forward to seeing more of you in the BA community, the global BA community, we should say, in good time. But until next time, thank you everybody that's watching. And we'll see you soon. But thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.